Hello, fellow classmates. Why do people, including myself, block this kind of spiritual discipline, the discipline of Examen? I think one of the reasons that a discipline like this is so challenging is the weight of it, the intensity of it. A few years ago, I tried to do the Examen prayer daily, and I had a journal running. I didn't always stick on prompt. It really helped me disentangle some of the things that were weighing me down and some relationships that I had some challenges with. And I think there's something really heavy about asking God to reveal himself in your life, because it maybe demystifies some of the ambiguity. I think sometimes we prefer the ambiguity of spiritual life because maybe sometimes we're afraid of what thing God is going to point out that needs changing. For what it's worth, I think the discipleship contour of the prayer of Examen is a significant cost to invite God into our lives. And that's something Christians should be willing and ready to do. But, you know, as Bonhoeffer calls it, it's costly. It's not a cheap grace. And so that kind of clarity, I think, is, cruciform. I tend to think of the spiritual life as like the architecture of time. Like in ancient Israel, they literally went through a ritualistic process where they did a bath, and then they come into the tabernacle, and there's bread, and there's a cup, and there's incense, and just the whole sensory experience of approaching God helped them to prepare themselves to be with him. And I think we, as kind of architects, our tool is time, and there's so many things bidding and competing for our time. Even at the outset of the exercise, it said, become aware of God's presence, and how do we do that? And I personally feel like in my own upbringing and in my pocket and of experience within Southern evangelicalism, that process of how do I actually spend time with God is left a bit ambiguous. So even having the tools to construct the kind of time and the headspace in order for us to sit in God's presence, what does that look like? So I think that's part of the factor is a lack of training or conceptual work, the rituals that help us reconnect and recondition our hearts and mind for God. We're more familiar with interfacing things for entertainment value. So I think the default way we use free time when it comes to the rectangle, the screens we carry in our pockets and everything, and I'm just as guilty of this as anybody else, but we tend to fill up that extra space with content rather than attempting to reflect. And that brings me to maybe a third factor that I think makes this challenging for people, that I think we really often look for escape, especially amid what we've been through over the last year and a half, year plus. And the idea of like, hey, God's in my life right now, and me, I'm still struggling with a foot injury right now. And so like, I don't always want to like relive the day. I want to live someone else's story and watch some sitcom or something entertaining or a good story. Dignifying our day with the fact that God was in it is a challenge, and rather than escaping our own lives. So reliving the day might be daunting for people. I think that would keep people away from this discipline. So my question to you guys is, how do you get yourself ready to pray? How do you do that? I mean, I have some things that I do. Sometimes I'll read a psalm, or I'll sit somewhere where I can hear the wind or a river. I'm fortunate to live near some cool physical features, so trying to get somewhere outside. But I've got kids, and I don't always have the time, and I don't make the time. But how do you prepare yourself to pray? I would love to learn from your ritual. Please help me out. All right, I hope these have been helpful thoughts and reflections. Can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. Godspeed.